What's going on, my friends? This is Daryl Andrews, again, Coach D, here to talk about another subject that is of interest to those of us out here trying to be effective in our work. But before I share that, I'm excited to mention that I will be a speaker at the National Association of Workforce Boards Conference, NAWB. And for me, it's kind of a victory because I've always wanted to speak at that conference. And I've been speaking at various workforce conferences for years, but was never able to make my way into that one. But this year I have been. So I'm just appreciative of the conference planners, the board, and all the key decision makers for allowing, a person like myself, a company like mine, which is a kind of unorthodox company in this industry because we're not a vendor, we're not a contractor anymore. We were at one point, and we're not an agency. We're a training and development firm that focuses on this particular space, as well as other spaces in education and corporate things of that nature. But anyway, just wanted to say to those of you out there who may be attending the conference, I'm looking forward to interacting with you. My session will be on March the 26th at 9 a.m. in this building, winning board and contractor relations. So look forward to that, and also look forward to interacting at the conference. If you're attending, I'll be in Vegas Monday night to Thursday night. So I would love to interact with you and get to know you and um, and share best practices with one another. So today, what am I talking about? One of my mentors years ago was a guy named Zig Ziglar, and many of you are familiar with Zig and understand that you know the influence and impact that he had on the industry. And so one thing he used to say, like Zig had a lot of things he would say, you know, and but the one thing he used to always say that caught my attention, and that is, if you're leading and nobody is following, you're just taking a walk. He had so many lines. If you're not a Zig Ziglar fan, man, you got to know he was just one of the greatest. And but I love that quote. If you're leading and nobody is following, you're just taking a walk. Now, why am I talking about this particular subject? Well, I've had the honor and privilege of working with quite a few organizations over the years. I mean, lots of them, obviously, as many know, in workforce development, but it's been some corporate um, organizations and companies that we've worked with, as well as nonprofit schools and school districts. So we kind of span the spectrum. But what am I talking about? It seems like every time I go into a place to interact with them, and this is going to be difficult to say, but it's the truth. I'm usually invited in by a leader or leaders, and they want the team to learn something, be it team building, um, be it emotional intelligence, maybe it's just general motivation across the board. But one thing I notice when I go in is that a lot of times the thing that really needs to be addressed the most is leadership. Is leadership because unlike a lot of different positions in the workplace, leadership to me is an art form. In other words, it's not something that you just naturally have or get promoted into. It's something that you need to study. And to me, if you're a leader and you're not reading books, if you're not attending seminars, if you're not networking with other leaders in similar positions, then I think you're kind of just taking a walk because this is something that you need to work on consistently. Now, why is that? Because one, today, the world has changed so fast. It's incredible to see the differences between 2015 and 2025. All right. We're in a different mode, in a different space within the past 10 years. Technology has consumed 90% of our lives. Um, People in their homes aren't interacting like they used to. It's kind of like, I don't even think most folks eat dinner together anymore. Two parents working, both stressed, full of anxiety, things of that nature at home. So when I leave work, then I could go home and deal with my work issues and back to work. And then if I'm volunteering somewhere, people are overwhelmed. You know what I mean? They're just overwhelmed. And so the stress level, the anxiety level is through the roof. Okay. And um, so you are leading a challenged, slightly traumatized generation. And the pandemic had a lot to do with that because the pandemic produced a lot of trauma in the lives of people. And most of you know through the work I do with the self-care movement, we talk about that a lot. And so what you're saying is you know, a need for a new type of leadership. And that's why I came up with the term, a new definition of leadership called post-pandemic leadership. Why I said this, and I'll say it again, and if you ever use it, don't you steal it. Make sure you give me credit. All right. Quote, because I got evidence by sharing it here that I own this thing. All right. The old model of leadership was the ability to guide, govern, and influence. And I say it's old, but it's still not outdated. That's still not a bad model of leadership, to guide, govern, and influence. But great leaderships, when you look at that book From Good to Great, see, you got to read these books if you're going to be a good leader. All right. Great leadership. Today, please write this down and don't ever forget it. It will change your organization. Take this back to your leaders, take this back to your managers, and share this with them because you're dealing with a different population of people today. Great leadership is the ability to listen, understand, and engage. Don't ever forget that. Today, great leadership is the ability to listen, understand, and engage. Other words, to be a great leader today, you need to be engaged in communication with your folks, conversations, listening, hearing what they're saying. Because you got boomers working with Gen Xers and Gen Ys, you got all these different demographics going on, and each of them have different needs. So if you're not a student of leadership, this is so important. You will lead from your perspective based upon your experiences. And that can be dangerous to a population or a generation who don't necessarily understand that particular model that you've been. For instance, if you're a boomer, you can probably sit in meetings for hours because that's how you were raised in your area of expertise. But Gen X or Gen Y, they may say, man, we can do this all on Facebook, not Facebook, but on FaceTime or Zoom. Get it done. Let's move on. So a leader in this generation has to learn how to balance all that. But you know what? There's a lot of great leaders out here that are doing it. And because here's what you got to understand. We want you to become a student of leadership. Okay. And so that's why I like coaching leaders, because what I think the leaders today are so busy, managers are so busy, to take the time to understand the individual need of an employee may be too much unless they're being coached. Because what'll take over is the chaos or the just challenge or the struggle of the moment. But when someone's coaching you, you will calibrate because of the coaching. And so it's important to understand this. Let me tell you something. Like, I'm coaching, and I love this, y'all. I really, really love this. So I'm coaching 100 leaders every month through this organization. I'm getting more organizations. I wish more associations would do this with their members, but it's a month to month, what we call motivational leadership coaching. Now, what we're doing with this particular group is a process called mastery. Because what I shared with them, I've been doing this a long time. I've coached executives of Fortune 500s. I've coached thousands of workforce development. And what I'm telling people in education leaders, principals, you name it, and what I'm sharing with them is without a system, you will become, it's hard to be effective as a leader. It's hard to be effective. So, without a system in place. And so what I'm sharing with you is that in order to be the leader that people want to follow, all right, I'm going to talk about that more in just a moment. You need to have a system. I love this quote. I'm a book reader. I read all the time, but James Clear, his book, Atomic Habits. Please don't forget this quote. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. What's your system for coaching and training your leaders? Or are they just doing job assignments? How do you measure if they're effective as leader besides 360? Is there other ways? Can you observe and see things? All right. Because we want leaders. If you're running an organization, this is something I always try to do with the people I get a chance to work with. You want the kind of leadership where people want to be like the leader that's leading them. And remember that definition I just gave you of leadership a few moments ago. All right. Just a few moments ago. And that is leadership post-pandemic is the ability to listen, understand, and engage. Your leaders should be trained on this because some leaders are still trying to lead like it was 7 years ago, and the world has changed. And that's why you have problems. Even if people are not quitting jobs as fast as they used to because of the economy, but they may be there and they may be disconnected, not effective because they're not being led. And so I always believe it's important to train leaders so that people want to be like them. And that doesn't mean that you soften your leadership stance or position or anything like that. What it means is you understand what leadership means today. Leadership today is not the same leadership of 5 years ago. I'm telling you, friends, it's not. And so here's just a few things to think about. Number one, you and your leaders should be sitting down together at least once a month and analyzing how we're doing as leaders. Are we listening? People should come in and prepared. Are we understanding? Are we engaging? All right. So that's one thing to think about. Let me go back to something I shared about this one leadership group I'm coaching. I didn't close the loop on that. Which it would be another point too. These leaders are given assignments. At first, they were kind of frustrated, like homework. Oh my God, coach, I don't want any homework. And what I shared with them was this: if you go through this training, it's full of content, and you go back to work just having sat in this training, then you were wasting your time. I need to see you create what's called mastery. And every time you're doing leadership development, there has to be a mastery component. I want to see in writing and via strategy what you're going to do with this content. So we don't overwhelm them. We give them enough, content and structure to go back and work on little bits of their assignment. Not a lot, like a stepping stone. And the responses to me have been unequivocally overwhelming. I am loving seeing how these leaders who now love the assignments themselves are coming back with their insights on how they're applying this leadership strategy. One of the leaders said it like this, and I think they said it best. I used to think that I was knowledgeable of leadership, but now I realize I wasn't as knowledgeable as I thought. But now that I know what I know now, I think I'm one of the best, I'm at the best point of leadership ever. I'm engaging with my staff. We're having conversations. I'm asking questions. I'm listening to what they're saying. And I found that relationships are getting better. The workplace overall, the culture is changing. People are doing their assignments more effectively. And this is just from them responding to us about this process called mastery. So they're telling us in writing what they are actually seeing as an outcome. And now the part that's most important about this particular leader's response is, guess what? The people that's following want to be like that leader. I've had two leaders in my life. Actually, if you look at mentors, there's more, but two leaders in the workplace. Like I used to work for Abbott Laboratories, in their medical diagnostics division and their pharmaceuticals division. And there were a couple leaders in there, man, that I gleaned from. I said, man, if one day I could be a leader like those leaders. And one was a guy named Jim Walton. I've shared his name many times. Used to call him Jimbo, and he passed away a few years ago. I can't believe he was an amazing guy. And not that he was the nicest, not that he was the kindest, but what I saw was a person that was really good at what they're doing and really wanted me to be good at what I was doing. And so sometimes it came across as I love you, and sometimes you better get your act together. But both scenarios made me a stronger leader. I want to be like him. You see, and there's others too I can mention, but just for the sake of time. So what I'm trying to say to you is lead because you want lead. I'm telling you, people should want to follow your leadership. And if they're not, then reevaluate how you're leading. Take the time to study people. Take the time to study leadership, read leadership books, go to leadership seminars, do leadership coaching. That's what I do. I'm going to keep you on task. Like I just told you, this 100 leaders that we're working with every month, we're keeping them on task. I'm sure if we can keep 100 leaders on task, we can keep you on task. you know, because the key is mastery. As a leader, I'm telling you, mastery is the key. I'll let you go with one that I've been honored and privileged to have really been mentored by some great people, as I mentioned. And again, I had multiple conversations with Zig when he was alive. I couldn't believe he would do that with me because I was a newer speaker at the time. And this guy was taking time, but I also had a couple conversations with a guy named Jim Rohn. All of these people I met through what's called the National Speakers Association, which is the governing body for speakers all over the world. And Jim Rohn used to always say in a few conversations, he was very difficult to connect with because he was just a busy, busy man. But he used to always say about leadership, be the example of what you want. Just be the example. Like people will pick it up vicariously if you're the example of leadership. And so that would take you from people not wanting to be led by you to people that want to be led by you. So I hope that this information was helpful because I want to see more leaders step into the realm of people following. And I think that's when companies and organizations, if people are always stressed and full of anxiety because of a person's leadership, that's not effective leadership. If they're in fear, that's not effective leadership. Fear leadership is easy because my assignment is greater than yours, and I can tell you this, and you just better do it. Now, you want people to want to do it, not better do it, want to do it. And that comes from, yes, maybe just a little bit of pressure because sometimes we need a little bit of pressure to produce, but then also a lot of compassion and a lot of listening and things of that nature. So I'm going to end this, but I hope this information was helpful. If you have any questions, reach out to me at info@coachdspeaks.com, info@coachdspeaks.com. If you or your team could use a little bit of leadership development and training and coaching, we do virtual coaching, one-on-ones, group coachings. We take organizational teams and we can break them up into smaller teams, mastery assignments around motivational leadership or post-pandemic leadership. It's one of the greatest needs of our times. And if you're trying to build a successful organization, I'm telling you, it starts at the top with leaders who are leading in a post-pandemic way, where they're listening, understanding, and engaging their people in such a way that they get the best work performance out of these folks, as well as create the best cultures. Talk to you soon. Have a passionate day.